Okay, Deryck, good morning. Thanks for joining me. We're
Morning.
live. I'm going to give the floor to you to start. Why don't you tell everyone in the audience about who you are and your company?
Sure. My name is Deryck Jones. I've been in business for over 50 years. My current company is a company called Top of Your Game Marketing. We are a marketing agency that focuses primarily. We have three different focus groups. We've got one which is targeting home services, electricians, plumbers, that kind of thing. Another focus group is chiropractic. I have a partnership with a physician that is an expert in pain management, and we are actually in the process of opening up pain clinics around the country. So I provide the marketing services for his chiropractic partners, and he provides a specific type of modality for the treatment of pain. It's called a class 4 laser. And then the third focus area, we work with what we call pivotpreneurs. These are folks that are, for one reason or another, pivoting out of a corporate role into becoming a solopreneur or entrepreneur. And we find more often than not, they are completely lost in terms of what they need to do I mean, they've been working in the one job slot for most of their career,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden they find themselves in a position of having to do everything, and they don't know how to do everything. So we have a focus groups that helps work and train those individuals. So those are the three primary areas. My career has been split between working as a serial entrepreneur. I've built multiple companies over the years, as well as about 15 years in the corporate world, where I've served as the VP of R&D in a $3.1 billion enterprise, and then served as the global CTO for an international PR firm. So I've got pretty good experience in both areas.
So, can we back up a bit? I'm curious why are you focusing on HVAC and electricians? Is there any reason you chose that niche from a marketing agency perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've I have two partners. One of my partners is has her PhD, and she's an expert in adult education and curriculum design. I have another partner who's got his MBA, and he also comes out of the education space. And so when we initially started, we started with the focus of developing membership sites and developing education platforms for any company that was really looking to bring forth some type of training product, either an existing enterprise company or private individuals that have some great idea that they or some specific area of expertise where they want to bring that and share it forward. And so we started with that. The challenge that we had was really being able to effectively target those individuals. We were getting them by referral, but that was the only way we were really getting them. We weren't succeeding really well in terms of either organic marketing or through advertisement, being able to get these people to engage. And so we made a conscious decision that we're really, it has to do with our exit strategy. I mean, we're looking to exit within the next 5 years.
Mm.
So we wanted to take a path that would give us the fastest growth rate, and one of the best areas is local, and it's working with electricians, plumbers, HVAC, that sub niche group, and so that's why we targeted it.
And so I think this is probably the case, but I would assume that many of those people in that profession don't even have a website or don't market online at all. Is that fair, or is that kind of an?
It's reasonably fair. I say reasonably because the larger multi-site where they have got multi trucks that they roll. The bigger ones, yeah, they do. They have websites. They've got large ad budgets. they spend pretty healthily on their lead management. But the mass majority, I would say, yeah, you're right. They don't have websites, or if they have websites, they're subpar. They struggle getting leads in the door, and so it's to us it's kind of low hanging fruit.
Yeah, and can you again kind of clarify exactly what you're doing for them? You mentioned membership sites. Is that what you're leading
Well,
with,
the
or is
membership
it?
sites, we are in the process of developing an entire program for the group I mentioned, Pivotpreneurs, which involves
Hmm.
education and training and so on and so forth. So we're building out an entire program for that. What we didn't want to do is it was be focused on that and not be bringing revenue in. So we picked what we thought would be low hanging fruit in the home services arena, and driving leads for that specific group, which is why we've targeted that group.
Okay, can you maybe break down your strategy on driving leads for electricians or HVAC? Are you just targeting the typical channels, Google Ads, or just online advertising? Is that essentially what you're doing for them?
We're actually doing a combination of things. So one, yeah, we're doing the traditional ad work, Google ads, Facebook ads, even some YouTube work. Um, but we're also taking an approach where we are targeting specific groups within social media. For example, Facebook. We'll target a variety of Facebook groups where we get kind of a message out, and then we hunt down and find um, our target audience, electricians, plumbers, et cetera, that are on Facebook, as an example, and then we are providing an incentive for them to engage with us through social media, and then essentially starting, we do the initial targeting that way, and then get the engagement going, and then from there invite them into a trial with us for basically we offer a 30-day trial where they can come in and they can try us out and see what we can do for them in terms of the lead generation.
Got it. And then can you maybe for the audience explain how a marketing agency works or what your revenue model is or how you're monetizing it? Is it just that you hire an electrician and they're on a kind of a retainer, or is it a percent of spend? How are you monetizing?
Well, what we primarily do with the home services group, we try to do as much recurring revenue, as many recurring revenue programs as we can. So we have four specific programs that we open the door with. We have our own platform. It's called Best Biz Toolbox. And within that platform, we've got four different offerings. For example, our most popular one is what we call Assured Connect. And most of these guys have no clue when it comes to marketing. And if you
Hmm.
put a marketing platform in front of them, they're out in the field. They have no interest. All they care about is getting those leads through the door, right? Um, well, one of their problems is fielding calls. They're on the
Hmm.
job, they get a call, and how do they field that call while they're working? So it's kind of a disruptive thing, but they deal with it. But a lot of times they miss calls. So we have a technology where when they miss those calls, we're able to essentially send a text back immediately as a response for them that gives a response and essentially says, I can't take your call right now, but I'll be back to you. And the messaging is however they choose to craft their message. We'll provide them guidance on best ways to do it, what's been most successful. But what it allows them to do is to focus on their job, not worry about missed calls, because all those missed calls are being handled by our technology in the background, providing an immediate response back. And we're now incorporating AI in the process as well. So there's actually
Hmm.
a dialogue that's going on that's all AI driven, and essentially providing that response back to the incoming call.
Hmm. No, I think that's interesting. And so, do you have any sort of like ROI on that,
We
or
do. We
like?
we actually have on our website. We actually have an ROI calculator for them so they can actually see how much money they're basically leaving on the table if they don't use our technology.
Okay. And just generally, I mean, maybe I know you specialize with electricians and HVAC and people in those industries, but I'd say just generally for small businesses, what is the simplest step they can take to capture more leads or generate more revenue from your experience? I know you just mentioned, hey, you have to answer the phone when it rings and follow up on the leads, but just from your experience, like, can you speak generally to the small
Yeah,
businesses of the world?
yeah. I think the biggest mistake most small businesses make is that they don't focus down. They don't. Um, it's really I would say two things. One having to do with the niche. They don't niche down. They don't get really targeted in terms of who their audience is. And then when they find that audience, they try to be all things to all people as opposed to being hyper targeted in terms of exactly what they're going to deliver to essentially provide that gateway offer to get them in the door.
Hmm.
You sell a lot more business to existing customers than you do to new customers. So the name of the game is getting that prospect in the door as a customer. So find an offer that's super targeted to your audience that has as little resistance as you can craft for them to take the offer and come in the door. We use our Assured Connect because these guys all know they miss calls. They
Hmm.
don't realize the cost of missing those calls until we put our ROI calculator in front of them. Then all of a sudden you see the lights come on and they realize, God, I'm losing that much money, and so the connection is almost instantaneous once they realize it.
And
So
is that your core offer as a marketing agency? Is that how
that's
you
our
hook
core offer is Assured Connect, yeah. And then
Assured
we've
Connect?
got
Okay.
three others right behind that that we also offer. So if Assured Connect isn't the trigger for that particular client, then one of our other three sure will be.
And so are you advising, let's say, electricians on how to craft their offer, or do you leave that up to them, considering, hey, you're kind
No,
of
no, no.
the
They don't have a clue. We provide the consulting and guidance to help them craft their offer. Absolutely.
okay. And can you give an example of, and I don't even know how an electrician is built. Is it just that there's like a standard, get your foot in the door with a customer, like, hey, you need to do this with your electrical work, and then therefore that person becomes or that entity becomes a recurring customer, or what's the core
Most
offer an electrician should offer?
from my experience, most of the time it is a new customer that is experiencing some form of failure. Either a breaker is blown, there's they need a new circuit brought in for some reason, or there's been, something that's happened in their home that requires them the services of either an HVAC technician, an electrician, or plumber, or whatever it might be. I've sprung a leak underneath my sink, and so they
Hmm.
need an electrician or plumber or somebody to come out, and the guy that they usually call didn't answer the phone. So now they're on rotary dial looking for the next person. So it's, getting customers like this and being able to respond fairly quickly and getting them in the pool. And then once providing the service, if they do their job right, then, they leave a card and they potentially have a customer for life.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense. I think, I mean, when you stop and think about it, right? Like, yes, electricians probably need a lot of help, or they could be making so much more, doing things so much more efficiently. I'm curious of you, when you started though, did you ever struggle with credibility, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you have a background in being an electrician. So how did
I have
you?
a background in construction, which
Okay,
has helped
okay.
me. So if I go way back in my career, I made my first million when I was in my 20s. I developed a piece of software for the heavy construction industry,
Mm,
and I sold it up and down the West Coast. And in fact, one of my biggest clients back then was a company called Todd Pipe and Supply out in California. I redid a portion of their network, and so I've been working in and around the construction industry for many years. So I know the trade.
got it.
Um, So that certainly helps.
Okay, that makes sense. And is that something you lead with to help bring in customers and leads yourself and establish credibility, or is that
I
not
do.
as
I
okay?
do.
And then is it also now the fact that you have all these customers and you have testimonials and you say, hey, we've helped X people just like you. Is that key to
It it
continuing?
it it absolutely certainly helps. I mean, the truth is that, in fact, which is one of our other key offers, is having to do with review and referral. The fact is that something like 92% of every consumer, when they go to purchase some product, they check reviews first.
Hmm.
So if you don't have a lot of reviews, if you don't have reviews that are at least a 4.4 or higher, typically even higher than that, 4.7 up, um, you're going to have trouble getting clients through the door. So one of the first things you want to be able to do is build up your referral base and reviews, the number of reviews you have available on your sites and various directory listings, so that when customers go and look and do a search on Google, they see those reviews. And the problem is that what most people don't understand is, it's not just an issue of having reviews. It's having a lot of reviews. And the other mistake people make is they think they need all fives. For example, if it's on a scale of 1 to 5,
Hmm.
um, all fives is a problem, because what that means is, to most people, when they see somebody that's got nothing but fives, particularly if it's a low number of reviews, um, that suddenly throws a question in my mind: is this real?
Hmm.
Because nobody has a perfect business. You make mistakes, and so the issue is: do you have a lot of reviews? Are they current within 3 months? And are there some issues in there that have been addressed? So, for example, somebody gives an initial review. Let's say it's a 4 out of 5, and does the um, uh, company respond to that review, and do they react? Do they correct? What is it that they do to adjust for whatever the customer's complaint is? So it's a matter of having lots of reviews. It's having reviews that are highly rated, and showing that you're not perfect, that you do make mistakes, but guess what? You correct them, you stand up for them, and you support your client. That's what customers are looking for when they look at reviews.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. But I was just thinking about this. I use Google reviews frequently when selecting services, and then I use services, but I rarely leave reviews. So how do you, as a small business owner again, or an electrician, how do you get your customers to leave you those reviews? Are there
The way
specific
you the way you get
strategies?
people to lead reviews is really simple. It's basically doing, are asking for the review immediately after the service is provided. All right. Don't provide any time, and make it as incredibly simple as you can for that reviewer.
Hmm.
So we have a technology that supports that. It provides our clients with the ability, one, to make those requests immediately after the service is provided, and to provide it in such a way that it doesn't take any time for the reviewer to be able to provide that response. So it's like when you have a form that you need somebody to fill out. If you ask for first name, last name, phone number, address, company name, if you ask for all these data points right out of the gate, most people don't fill them out. But if all you ask for is first name and email address on the initial contact, which is all you need,
Hmm.
um, people will fill that out more often than not. Then the next engagement, you ask for a little bit more, and the next one you ask for a little, and so you build it over time instead of asking for all of it right out of the gate.
No, I think that makes sense. And so this is a secondary offering that you offer. You
Yeah,
offer,
this is a secondary
okay,
offering we have. Yeah,
okay. No, I think that gives me and one final question I kind of want to
yeah.
ask you about this specific HVAC and electrician. So you picked your niche, is there a lot of competition in your niche, or is that one of the reasons
Oh
that you
yeah,
picked
it's
this?
it's hugely competitive. Yeah.
Okay. It, I mean, what would you say that it's like? Are there tens of marketing agencies, hundreds across the country, or like you call an electrician, they're like, oh no, another marketing agency is contacting me, or what's the,
Yeah,
okay, okay,
yeah.
huh. Um, and
Yeah, I
so,
mean that's
yeah.
that's one of the reasons why if you pick that niche, I mean I wouldn't necessarily recommend that niche, to a startup agency as an example,
Hmm.
because it is competitive, and typically to be successful in that niche, you do need to advertise. So you need to have some skill in terms of either Google Ads or Facebook ads, that kind of thing. There's a lot of other niches that are, um, you know, uh, just as good, if not better, in terms of, it's not nearly as competitive to go after. I would certainly look at what your skill set is and what your background is and try to target something that is consistent. I mean, like it's like your question to me, what kind of credibility do I have? Well,
Hmm.
I worked in the construction industry for years. Um, so I would certainly suggest that to, any startup agency is to kind of look at your team's background to see if you can't target a niche that's consistent with, your skill set. Um, but yeah, it is competitive, and it's certainly one that you need to be prepared for in terms of rolling up your sleeves and being able to get out there and really compete. Which we found we've been able to compete a lot of it because of my background.
Okay. And then, are there any other niches that you look at in marketing, and even if you don't have experience, you say, hey, there's an opportunity here, for anyone out there that's considering starting a marketing agency, or is it not
Yeah, I
that
mean,
simple?
I think that, I mean, for example, I had a managed services company before this one. I had a large managed services company up in Boston. We did about 4.5 million a year, and when I started that business, I literally started out of my home. I had my staff, and my first two employees would come to my house, and we used the dining room as the conference room, and I took two bedrooms and converted them, one into a little data center, and the other one was my office. And the two people that worked for me worked in the dining room around the table. And what actually, we probably would have stayed there for a lot longer than we did, but we had a customer that actually looked us up online and saw that we were in a residential area. And
Hmm.
that was enough of a motivation at that point. We certainly had enough revenue at that point to actually move out and get an office. And so we did. But, um, when you start, you need to be prepared to roll up your sleeves and put the time in, and you got to talk to a lot of people.
Hmm.
I did a lot of networking back then. I talked to tons and tons of people. I was on the phone constantly. And even now, I block out specific times of every single day where, during those time periods, I'm on the phone. That's all I do.
And so, how many people would you say that you're calling a day or reaching out to a day, so people can
At
understand
least
the
100,
volume? 100?
at least 100 a day.
And are these brand new people? Are these
These are
people that you're,
brand new. Yeah, I use some specific software I have that helps me to, basically search out leads. I compile a list every single day, and I work that list every single day.
hmm. And so, what would you say to someone that says, wow, 100 people a day? I don't think I can do that. Is it, hey, you're
My
good
my
luck?
response is how hungry are you?
Okay.
If one of the things as an entrepreneur, you've really got to do a self assessment as to whether or not you're cut out to be an entrepreneur. It's not easy. You've got to wear a lot of different hats, especially in the beginning. Um, you got to be willing to put in the time, and you got to work. And part of that work is engagement. You can't grow your business if you're not engaging.
Hmm.
So you need to figure out what's the best methods for you to actually engage and get connections. Networking is a huge area that's always been successful for me. But same as cold email outreach, making phone calls. looking at specific types of campaigns where I can get some sort of engagement, at key periods of time each year. Um, you've
Yeah.
got to put in the time.
So let's break it down a little further. You call 100 people a day. How many people are
Yeah.
you getting live?
Usually on a daily basis, out of 100, I might get 15 to 20.
And then from that, how many are thanks but no thanks and kind of hang up on you, or how many are?
Usually I get about 5 out of that I'm actually making a connection with and setting up a time to actually speak with them in more detail.
Okay.
And
No,
more often than not, see, I don't when I do my outbound calling, I don't try to engage immediately on that call. The purpose of that call is to get a
hmm
meeting,
hmm
is to schedule a time, 15 minutes, where I can get somebody on a phone in a meeting. And most of the time when you're doing that kind of outbound calling, the person's receiving the call is not prepared for that call, and they are not in a position, more often than not, to sit down and actually have a meeting with you. So your
Yeah.
objection or your objective is to get a meeting. Now, do you get calls where, right on the call, you go right into your pitch and discussion? Yeah, but more often than not, no.
Okay.
And
No.
not only that, but I don't typically recommend that either. You've got to build a relationship.
Mm,
The one thing that irritates me more than anything is if I'm, for example, on LinkedIn and somebody reaches out to me and the first thing they say in that outreach is a pitch for their service. Well, I get pitched all day long. I mean, hundreds of pitches all day long.
yeah.
I don't want to be pitched right out of the gate. I want to know that, I want to develop a relationship with that person first before I decide whether I'm going to do any business with them or not.
I, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's kind of the long game. I think it
Yeah,
comes back to people want the instant gratification or the instant sale, and that's just not the reality of it once you
it's
start
not.
doing it right.
No, you got to work for the relationship.
And so I think this applies to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know you work with solopreneurs, so maybe we can pivot there. But I think generally, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you just need to pencil in and you want to grow your business and you're doing the growing, you got to pencil in 100 calls a day in
Yep.
perpetuity, right? I mean, it doesn't go away. Maybe
It
it
doesn't
gets
stop.
easier. Maybe
Yeah.
it scales and maybe you hire a sales team, but then now you're managing the people that are making 100 calls a day. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
Really
mean, I
quick.
have
Yeah.
contractors that work for me. That's all they do is doing outbound calling.
hmm
And but to this day, I still make the calls. And I
hmm
do it because I want to keep my kind of finger on the pulse, so to speak. Plus, if I'm going to ask somebody to make calls for me, I need to show them that I'm not afraid to make the calls myself.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, really quick, I want to touch on because you said that you also, I want to understand, is everything you do part of the top of your game marketing umbrella, or are these three separate businesses? Because you talked about the pain clinics and that specific type of pain
Yeah. So that.
management.
Yeah. So what? Let me describe that a little bit. You know, I I'll get a little personal here. I'm a former Marine. I was
hmm
disabled out of the Marine Corps.
hmm
Um, and then, um, I was fortunate where disability wasn't, it was more an issue of something that disqualified me from service. It wasn't something that necessarily kept me from being able to serve, but it was an immediate disqualifier. I was in it, and I got an injury, and then because of that injury, they had to do X-rays and MRI and so on, and in that process, they discovered I had something that disqualified me from service. So I was out after 6 years.
Okay.
Um, but what ended up happening is I ended up working with my brother that at the time he had I don't know if you ever been to Six Flags and seen the high diving shows. He owned
Yeah.
that business. So he had
Okay.
every Six Flag park around the country. Well, anyway, I ended up, when I was growing up, we were doing cliff diving and high diving. And, these were 100-foot, dives off of a cliff. So I ended up with a number of ruptured discs and this, that, and the
Mm.
other thing over the years. And then I was, had a number of other injuries. Long story short, at six, well, when I was about 35, I got to the point where I almost couldn't walk. And then by the time I was in my 50s, I already had a double knee replacement, and that didn't go so well. And so for the last 10 years, up until about 6 months ago, I was pretty much chair ridden. I
Mm.
did all my work from my chair at the time. Well, I ended up meeting this physician online. He happened to be a former Marine himself. He was a helicopter pilot. And during Vietnam, his helicopter went down and everybody was killed except for him. And he also ended up with serious injuries and trying to come back from that and the pain that he suffered from that. Well, he ended up discovering a treatment modality having to do with something called a class 4 laser that changed his life.
Mm.
So when I met him 6 months ago, literally from then till now, I'm now working at my desk in my office, as you can see.
Yeah.
I'm averaging now about 4,000 steps a day, and increasing. Well, in that process, as we got to know each other, we decided, on our, that our mission was going to be opening up, either opening up pain clinics directly ourselves or working with in partnership with other chiropractors to bring them the technology and help them open up their clinics with this modality. And then I would provide all the marketing work. And so we're right now working, we've got 3 different chiropractors we're working with right now, developing case studies for. And we're putting a whole program together that we're going to be using to take around the country and, like I said, open up pain clinics. One of the big problems today, I can tell you from personal experience, is it's if you suffer from legitimate pain, serious pain, as I did for years, it's becoming more and more difficult to get the treatment that you need because of all the pressure dealing with oxycodone and
Yeah.
oxycontin and all those drugs, right? And who wants to be on those anyway, right?
Hmm.
But there's not a lot of options. Well, this one of the things we do is we go into these pain or into these chiropractors and we tell them, look, bring us your top 10 most difficult patients. Let us treat them for a day. And literally at the end of the day, you will see a difference. That's how
Yeah.
fast this stuff works. And that's how we get in the door. We actually show them the proof.
I,
So that's a business that is, the marketing is being serviced by Top of Your Game Marketing, but it is a
yeah.
separate business entity for the pain clinic.
And I think that's really interesting because you have such a personal connection to it. But I mean, just to kind of confirm, you were able to, from an entrepreneurial perspective, you were able to obtain equity in the company. Is that how it's working? It's a
Yeah,
partnership between, okay.
yeah,
And can you go into a little more detail about what the technology is? You said, this is a brand new
yeah.
technology that,
It's a class of laser. It's called a class 4 laser. The company that manufactures it is Aspen Laser. And it's an incredible technology because it penetrates deeply into the body, and it actually alters the mitochondria in the cell. So it
Mhm.
actually engages at the cellular level. And for example, in my case, what often happens, it deals with really 2 things. One, what's called the fascia, which is a kind of a thin tissuey layer that surrounds your entire body. And then the other is the tightening of the muscle groups around your joints. So, for example, my knees have a bend that's at about a 15 to 20 degree bend. I can't straighten my legs any longer.
Mhm.
Um, and and so what happens is your brain basically when you kind of bend up that way, your brain kind of is trying to protect you. And so it essentially kind of locks you into a position that you really shouldn't be in, but you're locked into that position because your brain's trying to protect you, and so it's tightening up those muscle groups, right? So what this does is actually penetrates right into the cell, and it impacts the moisture and other aspects of that cell and I'm not a doctor, so
Mhm.
Dr. McCauley can tell you a lot better than I can, but in effect, what's happening is it's allowing me to open up my legs more. It's allowing the muscles to be able to relax more into better positions than they currently are in. And it's for me, it's making a world of difference.
And so how does it work if you're the patient? You show up to your chiropractor, you sit in a chair, lay on a table, and does it hurt, or do you even
It
know
has a
that
it, no. You feel a little bit of warmth, but that's it. You don't really feel anything beyond that. It's a handheld wand that connects to the laser device, the machine,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like you ever been to where they treat you with ultrasound? And they have that little wand and the um, gel that they put on and they rub with that. It's kind of like that.
Mhm.
Um, and you just treat very specific areas. The reason why the ROI is so great for doctors, it's two reasons. One, the result is almost immediate. So when you get treated, I mean, that's not like the treatments stop. You need ongoing treatments, but the brilliance about it is it can be done by a trained technician. So the doctor can hire somebody, train them on how to use the laser, and this could be a $10 an hour person. They
Yeah.
can train them on how to actually use it, and the doctor doesn't have to sit there and do it themselves. Now, in more cases than not, the doctors like to do it, especially the first several rounds of treating. But then what we try to ultimately train them on is train a technician, bring in quote unquote an army of technicians to do it, so your high value time can be applied in other areas. And it's very, very cost effective for the chiropractor.
Yeah. No, I've never heard of it. So is anyone else distributing this technology, or is it available already in a
Because
lot of
one of the
chiropractic
problems,
offices?
yeah, one of the problems in the industry is that there's a lot of misinformation, and there are some other companies that produce a class 4 laser, but they are nowhere near as good or as capable as the one that's produced by Aspen. Aspen's been in business for 35, 40 years.
Mm.
They
Mm.
know their stuff, and so it's definitely that one that you want. And Yeah, it works. I mean, I can tell you it works. I was, like I said, chair ridden for almost 10 years, and I'm not anymore. And it's because of the treatment I'm getting from Dr. McCauley.
Yeah. So how does someone in pain find a chiropractor or a provider that has the
You can
Aspen
go
laser?
on the web. You can look up aspenlaser.com. You can go to the Aspen Laser site. They'll have listings of their partners. And you can see testimonials of both physicians. You can see testimonials of the people that actually build the product and so on. So you can get a lot of information from that website.
And you said that you're chair ridden too, and so you've dealt with a lot of pain in your life recently. What advice do you have someone? Because I think that's a problem across the U.S. You mentioned the opiate epidemic.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
What do you
And it's
recommend to someone that's in pain? I mean, how do you manage it? How do you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Or what was it like for you going through that, right? I mean, you said you can walk now, but were you kind of hopeless and just assumed you wouldn't be able to
you
walk and you'd
know,
just be in pain forever?
Well, I kind of resolved in my own thinking that, yeah, I was going to be in pain for the rest of my life. In fact, I knew I was going to be in pain for the rest of my life. I mean, I've been in, literally because of impacts, I've lost 2 inches off of my height.
Mm.
Okay. I have neuropathy in both legs. I've got, 7 ruptured discs in my back. I've got a broken vertebrae, broken tailbone 3 times, broken wrist, broken arm, broken ankle, broken all
Jeez.
my toes, broken most of my fingers. I've got AS, which is basically it's a curvature in the spine, which is what got me thrown out of the service.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I've got a whole bunch of issues. I've been dealing with it. Oh, and then the best part of it is, I'm not being facetious. When I was 35, I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, which is like rheumatism. It's and
Hmm.
it's an autoimmune disease. So what they did is they put me on methotrexate, which is a drug used for chemotherapy, and I literally injected myself 1 cc a week for an entire year. I moved to
Jeez.
California, had to get a new doctor, and the first thing that doctor said was, "You don't have psoriatic arthritis." So for an entire year, I was injecting myself with a drug that can destroy your liver, can destroy your kidneys, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Um, it had its impact. And, so, but I've always been the type of person that, you know, I'm very positive thinking. Hell, Mike, when I was a kid, my nickname was Sunshine because I was always so positive on everything. And I've always been that way.
Hmm.
So you've got to find something when you suffer from chronic pain. You've got to be able to find something that you can focus on, that allows you to take your mind off of the pain that you're suffering from. I've always been really good at computer work, programming, technologies. I've worked in a wide array of different technologies. And so, I can get on a computer and spend countless hours on the computer and be perfectly content. And
Hmm.
so, whatever it is, you need to find something that you can put your mind to that's not on the pain. And then ice is your friend. I've got so many different ice packs in my freezer. I take half my freezer space with ice packs. I also have an ice machine that, it's from after my knee, when they did my knee replacements. It's a machine that you can connect up to yourself, and it provides constant cold to whatever region you apply it to.
Yeah.
Um, so you got to find the things that work for you. And like I said, you've got your mind controls so much. It controls everything, quite frankly. And so if you allow yourself to have negative thoughts, those thoughts are going to have a direct impact on your well-being. So you've got to find a way, no matter what it takes, you got to find a way to be able to break through that. And I found, personally, if you can find something else that you can concentrate on, to take your mind off of just sitting there and thinking about your pain, it goes a long way towards helping you, recover.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you just listed a laundry list of injuries, and I'm just curious. You mentioned that I believe it was your brother was a high diver. Were a lot of those caused from diving?
It was, I've had a whole combination of things. So for example, it started when I was 5. When I was 5 years old, I fell off a bike, went right into a curb, and had a concussion for 3 days.
Mm.
They kept me, pretty much tried to keep me awake. That was back, 1963, something like that, 62, 63. Um, I dislocated my wrist and broke my arm when I was 7, playing with my father in the backyard. He was throwing us off of his feet, just stuff, kids and
Yeah.
dads do. And unfortunately, I kind of fell forward, and I stuck my arm out to break my fall, and
Mm.
broke my arm. So it's been a combination of things over the years. I was in a 37 car pileup and had to be cut out of the car. Broke my sternum in that accident. Was in a couple of motorcycle accidents. A lot of diving injuries. I had a gymnastic injury when I was in high school where I was doing a giant swing, lost my grip, and literally went flying through the air, landed on the back of my neck, and woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Um,
Jeez.
so I was both my brothers and I were pretty active, you might want to say, growing
Yeah.
up. So just kids being kids.
Do you ever have any regrets? And if you think back, hey, if I hadn't been a high diver, or if I hadn't ridden this motorcycle, I could be in a place where I'm not in pain. Or does that ever cross your
Nah,
mind?
nah, I don't
No?
think that way. No,
Okay.
no. I always think forward. I never think back.
Yeah, and maybe we can wrap this up, but I'm just curious. I think you talked about it too, is like it's important to concentrate on something else, but beyond that, has your pain taught you anything, or has it, kind of improved your life, or like a positive spin on things? Like, hey, pain sucks, but it taught me this.
Yeah, it definitely has, because it's taught me self-control in many ways. Because I've had to learn to self-manage. Um, you know, Doctors are not particularly good at dealing with pain, and they're not particularly good with treating pain.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the big problems we have today, at least in the U.S., when you go to physical therapy, for example, they treat you body part by body part. So, for example, it's a lot to do with the way our insurance system works. I have what's referred to as a frozen shoulder. I was actually hospitalized for 4 days because of my right shoulder, and now I've got it in my left. Um, when I go to physical therapy, they treat me for my left shoulder, but they don't treat my whole body. And it's my whole body, because what happens is, if you have a problem with your left shoulder, so you favor it, so you use your right side more than you do your left. So then you irritate your right side, and then you just kind of
Yeah.
go, it's ridiculous. And so you really need whole body treatment, and trying to get whole body treatment in a physical therapy center, good luck.
Yeah. No, I think this is super interesting though, right? Because I didn't know that you had gone through this, but I think it's a very important part of your story, and it really does tie back to that venture that you're going into with the pain clinics, right?
Yeah.
It's helped you. You're really trying to make a difference. And then I think now let's pivot to your third venture, and I think it's called Pivotpreneur, right? And it has to
Yeah,
do
we
with
have a group called the
solopreneurs.
Pivotpreneur Generator. Yeah, it spins from both myself and my partners. Both my partners, for example, they also pivoted out of a previous career. And so, we were sitting around one night talking, because, we meet twice a week, and we were sitting around one night talking, and we realized that all three of us had, pivoted one or more times over our career. And, it suddenly, kind of came to the forefront that, what do people do when they pivot? Well, they find themselves often in a position that, they're challenged by, because they don't have the skill set that they need, and they have to learn it somewhere. And you either make a lot of mistakes, like we did at some point, and or you go and you learn from somebody who's already made those mistakes and can help keep you from making those mistakes for yourself going forward. So we decided to put a program together. So we're actually building that program right now, and everything from positive thinking, the mindset kind of training, all the way through practical skills in terms of, how do I keep my, how do I run my books? How do I,
Yeah.
how do I do, my lead gen? How do I do this and that? And so it's basically a 3-tiered program, and depending on what your skill set is and where you need help, you'll enter the program in one of 3 areas.
And is that for specifically who's your target audience? Is it solopreneurs? Is it any entrepreneur, any
Our
new
target is
entrepreneur?
anybody that is pivoting from a corporate position for some reason, whether they've been laid off, whether they've got a medical condition, and so now they're finding themselves having to work from home, or they're having to give care to a family member, and so they're having to work from home. So for whatever the reason is, they're pivoting out of a corporate job into being a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, and they need to learn very quickly what they have to do, how they need to do it in order to be successful.
And is that a monthly subscription that they would pay to be a part of this? And it would come with
It is.
all of the course materials, the
Yep.
mentorship groups, the mentors. I would assume they have access to you, for example. So,
Yeah. I mean, all three of us are, I mean, I'm a coach because I've been coaching people for decades. Both my partners are actually trained certified coaches. For example, Hugh is a John Maxwell trained coach, and Dr. Lois, she's trained under another group. I don't remember which one it is, but both of them are certified coaches, and so yeah, they get direct access to all three of us.
I think there's a lot of value there. And I'm curious, is there a trend of more people making that pivot, or has it always been this way? Like you go back
No,
30 years and people are always saying, hey, I want to leave corporate America and start my own thing. It seems like with the
well,
internet
people have
that,
always been leaving corporate America.
yeah,
I mean, that's something that's always been true, but it's definitely accelerated over the last few years, particularly since COVID. You see a lot more people that are wanting to be able to continue working from home, and um, two, kind of feel like the door is open for them to be able to do so, and so now they're looking for how they can leverage it.
And what types of people are you working with, or what is the most common path you see someone take for a solopreneur? I know earlier we talked about how you basically run a marketing agency. There's a lot of other marketing agencies out there that are targeting electricians. I mean, are there specific areas people are going into when they make that pivot?
Yeah, the biggest one that I see is going into either the coaching or education space. In other words, it's
Mhm.
somebody that's got a particular skill in a specific area, and they want to be able to share that skill with others. And so they've developed their own training program or in the process of developing their own training program. Maybe they need help with the development of that training program, and then help with the marketing and promotion of that particular program that they've developed. That's probably the most common thing that we're seeing.
Okay. And how about to anybody listening to this that wants to make that pivot or that step but doesn't know what to do? I mean, what's the first step they should take when
Uh,
considering how to start a business or their own business?
well, I mean, one of the first things I would do is take advantage of the resources that are currently available out there. I mean, they can contact us. The Better Business Bureau has got all kinds of material for small businesses, so it's a great education resource, both in terms of learning how to evaluate your business, how to put together a simple one-page business plan, things like that. And then of course they can get into a program like ours, where they can get the support, training, and camaraderie that they need. I mean, I think one of the biggest difficulties for most entrepreneurs, and particularly for people coming out of the corporate space, is they're used to being able to work with people. They're surrounded by
Mhm.
people, and then all of a sudden they suddenly find themselves at home alone,
Yeah.
and nobody to talk to. So our program gives them people to talk to.
Yeah. I mean, that's a small piece, but I think that's a big part of it.
It's a
And
big part of the mindset.
is that so? What is the one reason people quit? I mean, is that it? Is it the loneliness or the
You mean quit
like if they say I want to
as
start
an
a
entrepreneur?
business, yeah, I want to start a business, they try for however long, a month, two
I think
months.
the reason most people quit is it really comes down to money. In other words, they didn't plan well enough, and so they don't have enough money to support what they're trying to do. Um, that's probably the biggest challenge most people face.
Is there can you speak generally to how much money you need to start, let's say, a coaching business or a course business? Is there a recommendation you give to people? Hey, have at least this much money
I would
available to
tell
you.
people that you want to have at least 6 months worth of whatever your lifestyle of living is. You need to have at least 6 months worth of money to support the lifestyle that you want to live, available to you. Because if you don't have that, it's a very high probability that you're going to be, right back to the drawing board looking for a job to be able to support you. You're doing that. Now, for example, in my case, I had the benefit of, my wife works. She works for the government. She's a thermal engineer. She's very well paid, and so that's always helped us throughout my career, because she's always been there,
Hmm.
and she's always been able to kind of plug that gap when we needed the gap plugged.
Yeah, I think that's important. You have to have that backup plan or that
You got to
consolation
have the
plan, right?
backup plan, and you got to have the support. I mean, if you don't have the support of your spouse and your significant other, your immediate family, that makes the challenge that much harder. Because then who do you turn to?
Yeah, and in terms of support, I mean, just in terms of kind of like emotional support, right? Not even
Yeah,
financial, just that, hey, they're like, yeah, go for this. You can do it. It's going to be great. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so let's pivot. I kind of want to pivot back to you, right? You have these three
okay.
ventures going. At the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that an acquisition was your goal. And again, I want to understand, are these three separate entities? Is Pivotpreneur also its own freestanding entity with
Well,
different?
believe it or not, I actually have more than this going on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have a safari
Yeah.
company in Tanzania,
Huh.
and then I have another group. There's 8 of us that are in partnership, and uh, essentially a networking group for doing, power hours, networking sessions, live working sessions, brainstorming, all those kinds of things. That was a group I started a couple of years ago. And so that's been an ongoing enterprise. But I had got to the point where I was going to retire, and then I'm the type of person that I can't sit still. I've got to constantly be engaged and be busy, and so I've with these different activities, I'm fortunate. I've got great partners, and so it allows me to be able to do a lot of different things without necessarily being completely hamstrung in one versus the other.
Do you ever feel like you have too many things going on and say, hey,
Always.
if I just went all
What
in
I'm
on
doing
this?
is definitely not something I would recommend to anybody. I would basically tell anybody, pick one specific thing and focus on that. I'm just an anomaly in the sense that I've been able to engage in multiple activities and be able to be successful in each as I'm doing it.
So you won't take your own advice in that, I guess, right? Or at this point in your career, it's kind of too late. You're like, hey, I want to do all these different
Well,
things
I'll give you an
and try
example.
different things. Or
The activity in Tanzania is literally my supporting. I met a young guy that's a guide in Tanzania, and he wanted to
Mhm.
break out from the big travel company he was working with, and he wanted to be his own safari guide. And he's the number two ranked guide in Tanzania. And so, initially it started with my just helping him put together a website. And
Mhm.
then it developed from there where I supported him but with the whole idea being that at some point that business will transition and it'll be 100% his and I'll walk away.
Got it. So I think that's a lot of your ventures are that where you just have your foot in it,
Yeah,
like you're helping with the pain management. You're doing, hey, I'm doing the marketing. So it does
yeah.
come back at the end of the day, all comes back to marketing.
It all comes back to
Um,
top of your game one way or another.
yeah, no, I think that makes more sense then. But again, I want to pivot back. You said, hey, there's an exit. So is it the exit of selling the agency? I've built up this clientele of thousands of electricians and
Yeah.
HVAC professionals. And so that's where
Yeah, I'll
the,
tell you one last story and then you'll get it. When
okay,
I had my managed services company in Boston, I grew it to 4.5 million in 3 years. I had clients like Sony, Canon, Professional, Radio Frequency Systems, Genesis, Telecommunications, Jumpstart for Young Children, Volunteers of America, etc. It was a great business. I had a friend of mine that he's actually the inventor of the pager. He worked for Motorola for a number of years. Brilliant guy. Was one of the founders of Frontier Communications and so on and so forth. He was putting together a huge, huge deal. And he was going to buy 25 companies that had assets in dark fiber, computer assets, and so on. Well, when he found out who my clients were, he made an offer. I had an offer on the table for 11.1 million to buy me out as long as I would come over and run their platform group. So
wow,
we drew up the papers. I actually went down to Florida to help start his build out. I hired an interim CEO to run on demand communications group. And then it turned out that his investor was a front man for an organized crime group that had been basically skimming the assets off of the gambling boats down in Mississippi. Well, that guy's now sitting behind bars in federal prison. But in the aftermath of that whole affair, I lost my company. I lost 1.5 million personally. I lost pretty much everything we had set aside for our retirement. So, which is why I had to start over again
wow, yeah.
um, with what I'm doing now. So, yeah, so there was a strong motivation there.
And so that's the motivation of let me grow this marketing agency as big as I can so I can get that exit that I almost had
Exactly.
previously. Okay.
Yep.
Well, and is there any lesson in there? I mean, maybe as we can kind of wrap up here, is that if you look all the way back, I mean, you've been through a lot of trials and tribulations. I mean, is there any lesson out there for entrepreneurs listening or anybody listening
Yeah,
about
I mean, I
life?
guess the biggest lesson I learned out of that particular affair was that um, it's not a matter of trust per se, meaning that I should have done a lot more due diligence than I did, but I didn't because he was a friend,
Hmm.
and I trusted that the investors were, that was on in his wheelhouse, so to speak. I needed to know that he was a legitimate and solid buyer of my company, which I thought he was.
Yeah.
But I should have dug a lot deeper and looked at the investment behind him as well. And I didn't. I didn't go that far, and I should have. So the lesson is, don't take anything, just by the word. Do your own homework, do your own research, and make sure that you are 100% solid yourself with every aspect of any opportunity or deal that you're engaged with.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to when you're working with solopreneurs and they're not prepared for what they're entering
Yep.
into and they don't have the monthly expenses saved or they don't know what they're getting
Well, yeah, I
into,
mean,
right?
most people, when they start a business, they don't even think about their exit strategy. And that's one of the first things you should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Why am I getting into this? And, is the purpose to sell at the end of 3 to 5 years? Is it to go public? Is it to turn it into a franchise operate? I mean, what's your exit strategy out of what you're doing? Because that drives a lot of the strategies that you're going to then take going forward, based on what your exit strategy is.
Yeah. I think generally, right, it's have that forward looking attitude or mindset, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, Derek, I appreciate. I learned a lot, especially about your story, right? And I think something that's interesting to me. I reached out to you on LinkedIn, and you see everybody's LinkedIn profile, but then when I actually have a conversation with you, it's really interesting to learn more about your past, your personal experiences, everything. So I want to thank you for taking the time. And to
Sure.
kind of close out here, I'll give the floor to you. If you want to let people know where they can find you and what you have going on.
Sure. Again, it's Deryck Jones with Top of Your Game Marketing. You can reach us at 703-546-9986. You can also email me at Deryck, it's spelled Deryck, at topofyourgamemarketing.com.
All right, Derek, thanks so much. And I'll put both your phone number, your email, your
Okay.
LinkedIn, if you're okay with it, your website,
Oh, yeah,
everything in the description
absolutely.
so people can find you. But again, hey, I wish you the best of luck. It sounds like you got a lot of good things going on and going for you,
Well, I
like
appreciate
you
it,
said.
Connor, and thanks for the opportunity to meet with you.
Yeah, take care and best
All right.
luck.
All right. Thanks. Take care.